Some RPGs get dunked on so hard online you'd think they personally stole somebody's save file. But every now and then, the disappointing game is still secretly a blast once you stop listening to the crowd and just play the thing. This list is for those messy, divisive, absolutely not perfect RPGs that still know how to hook you, surprise you, and eat 40 hours of your life while you keep saying, okay, one more quest.
Oh my god. No one saw that.
UnderRail is one of those games that does not care if you're comfortable. It will hand you a brutal build screen, toss you into a hostile underground world, and basically mutter, "Figure it out, champ." And honestly, that's part of the appeal. When it clicks, it feels incredible. Every trap, every weird gadget, every desperate fight you only survive because you remembered you had one grenade left makes you feel smart in a very old-school, evil little way. Yeah, it can be obtuse and can absolutely bully new players, but if you enjoy RPGs that make success feel earned instead of handed out in a gift basket, this thing is catnip. It's harsh, crunchy, and deeply satisfying once you stop resisting its nonsense and start weaponizing it. Wayfinder had a rough reputation cloud hanging over it for a while, which is a shame because the actual game feel is way better than people give it credit for. The combat has that chunky, colorful action RPG rhythm where you're zipping through dungeons, smashing enemies, collecting loot, and getting into a very dangerous just one more run mindset. The art style does a ton of heavy lifting too. Everything has this stylized fantasy comic vibe that makes the world fun to exist in. Sure, you can still feel some awkward leftovers in the design here and there, like a game that had to reinvent itself mid-sentence. But if you can roll with that, there's a really enjoyable co-op dungeon crawler underneath it all. It scratches that MMO-ish itch without demanding your entire social calendar and soul. Code Vein 2 is exactly the kind of sequel people love to argue about for 6 straight months, and I get why. It's dramatic, moody, a little over-designed, a little janky, and somehow still really easy to get absorbed in. The big draw is that build tinkering itch. Messing around with abilities, swapping your setup, and finding a style that turns a miserable fight into a stylish revenge tour is just plain fun. It may not have the cleanest combat feel in the genre every single second, and sometimes it absolutely trips over its own ambition, but there's a lot to like if you meet it halfway. It has that anime action RPG energy where even the messiness becomes part of the charm. Sometimes you don't want perfect, sometimes you want cool codes, giant monsters, melodrama, and a fight that feels one bad dodge away from disaster. A lot of the hate around Assassin's Creed Shadows hit way before people even settled into what the game actually feels like. Once you do, there's a lot to enjoy here, especially if you like having two very different flavors of chaos. Sneaking through a fortress with patience and precision feels great, and then switching gears into a louder, heavier approach is its own kind of therapy. The world has that "I'll just clear one more thing" pull that Ubisoft games are weirdly good at, even when you swear you're above it. Are there familiar open-world habits here? Oh, absolutely. This game has seen a map icon before, but the core loop is fun, the stealth has more bite than some people expected, and the combat has enough weight to keep encounters exciting. It's not revolutionary, but it is very playable in that dangerous time-erasing way.
Falling at the hands of Typhon. Didn't I change him into a lion?
Immortals Fenyx Rising got written off by a lot of people as a knockoff, which is unfair because it's one of the most cheerful, easy-to-love action RPGs in this whole lane. The best thing about it is how breezy it feels. Movement is snappy, combat is flashy, puzzles break up the pace nicely, and the whole adventure has this playful mythological energy that makes it hard to stay grumpy. The humor definitely won't hit for everyone, and yeah, sometimes it can feel like it drank 3 energy drinks before talking to you. But when you're gliding across the map, solving a quick puzzle, then smacking a giant monster off a cliff with god powers, it's hard not to have a good time. It's bright, silly, and way more mechanically satisfying than the dismissive takes would have you believe. Before we go into the list, I want to give you my recommendation for some of the best deals in instant gaming right now, especially if you're tight on budget. We knew that instant gaming always give us so many crazy deals for your favorite games, like these titles for example. I mean, can you believe these prices? If you love RPGs, there's no way you never heard of these masterpieces, and to think that you can get them under $10 or even $5, it's an absolute steal. All you have to do is just click my link in the description below, start searching for your favorite games and use the activation code on your chosen platform. By using my link, you're not only saving tons of money, but also helping me to support this channel. Alright then, let's get back into the list. Outriders is one of the most this is actually kind of awesome games in the looter-shooter RPG space. The secret sauce is aggression. This isn't a game that wants you hiding behind cover forever, like you're filing taxes in a war zone. It wants you pushing forward, chaining powers, exploding crowds, healing through violence, and generally behaving like a magical maniac. That makes fights feel fast, scrappy, and surprisingly intense. The build stuff is fun too because once you start combining gear perks with class abilities, your character can become hilariously destructive. Sure, it had baggage and sure, parts of it can feel rough around the edges, but when the combat rhythm clicks, it really clicks. Few games make you feel like a walking natural disaster quite this well. It's messy comfort food, and sometimes that absolutely hits. Borderlands 4 had the impossible job of following a series people already argue about like it's family drama, so of course the reaction got messy. But if you judge it by the moment-to-moment fun, there's a lot going on here. The shooting still has that addictive slot machine brain poison the series is known for. You see a gun drop, say that sounds stupid, equip it anyway, and suddenly you're in love with a weapon that fires nonsense and solves all problems. The movement and combat feel more lively, and the whole thing has that familiar Borderlands loop where hours vanish in a blur of loot, bosses, bad decisions, and co-op yelling. Is every story beat a winner? No. But let's be honest, most people are here because a shotgun just did something disrespectful to physics. On that front, the game absolutely understands the assignment. Fire Emblem Engage caught a lot of flack for not being the kind of Fire Emblem some people wanted, but the actual tactical gameplay is ridiculously good. This is the sort of strategy RPG where every map can turn into a small personal crisis, and I mean that as a compliment. Positioning matters, timing matters, and the big flashy mechanics are more than just spectacle, because they open up all kinds of clutch saves and evil little combos. The story and tone are where the divide comes from, and yeah, it can get very anime in a way that will either charm you or make you stare at the wall for a second, but on the battlefield, it absolutely cooks. It's one of those games where you finish a tough encounter and immediately want to talk about how you survived it like a retired war veteran.
I shall not betray my brother's trust.
Wolong is the kind of game people dismiss too quickly if they wanted it to be something else. If you go in expecting a perfect clone of another famous parry-heavy action RPG, sure, you'll spend half your time comparing. But if you meet Wolong on its own terms, it's a really fun, fast, stylish combat RPG with an excellent rhythm. The deflect system feels great once your brain adjusts, and that back and forth of pressure, recovery, and punishing enemy attacks creates some seriously satisfying fights. It's also more approachable than its reputation suggests, which honestly helps. Not every action RPG needs to treat you like you insulted its ancestors. Yes, repetition can creep in, and not every part of the adventure is equally memorable, but the combat has enough snap and swagger to carry a lot, and when you're locked in, it feels fantastic. Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the easiest games on this list to defend because even when it frustrates you, it does it in a way that feels weirdly memorable. This game is pure adventure energy. Not checklist adventure, not follow glowing line adventure. I mean the kind where a simple walk to town turns into a night battle, a griffin attack, a panicked sprint, and your pawn shouting something obvious with the confidence of a motivational speaker. The combat is excellent, the vocations are fun to experiment with, and the giant monster encounters still have that chaotic climbing all over a beast magic. It absolutely has issues. Repetition, awkward systems, and some baffling decisions are real. But the highs are so specific and so good that they stick with you. Few RPGs create stories by accident this well. It's a magnificent troublemaker. Rise of the Ronin got hit with a lot of "it's not polished enough" criticism, and honestly, fair. But I still think it's secretly one of the most enjoyable action RPGs to just settle into. The combat is the star. Once you start understanding the stances, counters, weapon styles, and flow of a duel, fights become this really satisfying dance of pressure and punishment. It also has that open-world comfort food loop where you can drift from mission to mission, get distracted by side content, and keep building out your character without feeling boxed in. The story choices aren't always as dramatic as they sound on paper, but the historical setting gives the whole thing a cool identity. It may not be the prettiest or most groundbreaking game in its class, but it's got heart, steel, and enough fun in its combat to carry a lot of the weight.
You know I cannot let you leave. Deserters of the clan are marked for death.
Octopath Traveler 0 had people side-eyeing it for all kinds of reasons, but if you can get past the skepticism, there's still a lot of classic JRPG goodness here. The combat system remains the big hook. Breaking enemies at the right moment, unloading boosted attacks, and juggling a larger party setup gives battles that same satisfying tactical texture the series is known for. And yes, this one absolutely feels different from the previous main entries. That's part of why it's divisive, but also part of why it's interesting. It's not just trying to photocopy what worked before. Sometimes it sprawls, sometimes it overdoes things, and sometimes it absolutely asks for your patience. But if you like long-form turn-based RPG comfort with strong music, layered boss fights, and that warm HD 2D vibe, there's still a lot to sink into here. It's a weird branch, but it still grows good fruit.
休んでて。つけといてくれ。万丈この私の舞台。
Diablo IV became the internet's favorite punching bag for a while, but here's the thing. Even at its most criticized, it was still very easy to lose entire weekends too. The campaign has atmosphere for days, the combat is smooth in that dangerously satisfying click delete loot repeat way, and building a character still scratches that powerful action RPG itch better than a lot of games can. The hate mostly gets loud around endgame systems, seasonal pacing, and all the stuff that matters most when you've already inhaled the first 100 hours. And that criticism is valid, but people sometimes talk like the whole game is a disaster, which just isn't true. There is a ton of fun in carving through mobs, chasing upgrades, and watching your build go from awkward to disgusting. It's a game that's often better in your hands than it is in discourse, which is a sentence that applies to way too many games now. Lords of the Fallen is one of those games where the conversation around it can make you think it's barely functional, and then you play it and go, wait, this is actually good. The dual world mechanic is the obvious standout. Flipping between the living realm and the nightmare version underneath it gives exploration this cool, dangerous tension that makes the world feel more distinct than a lot of Souls-likes. It's moody as hell too, in the best way. The environments are grim, oppressive, and wonderfully committed to the bit. Combat can feel a little floaty to some people, sure, but it also has a satisfying weight once you adjust. And after updates, the whole package feels much easier to recommend than it did at first. It's not perfect, but it has identity, ambition, and enough style to make the rough edges worth tolerating. Monster Hunter Wilds getting hate mostly proves one thing. When a series gets huge, people start grading it like it personally promised to fix their life. But even with the complaints, this game is outrageously fun to play. The core hunting loop is still pure crack. You prep, track, fight, adapt, cart maybe, recover, win, then immediately decide you need that same monster's pants for build reasons. The combat feels amazing, the monsters are spectacular, and every weapon still feels like learning a different profession with its own union rules. Yes, some longtime fans miss certain things. Yes, performance and design complaints are real. But once you're in an actual hunt and the monster starts panicking, enraging, limping, and turning the whole battlefield into chaos, none of that disappears exactly, but it does get a lot quieter. At its best, Wilds reminds you why this series owns people's souls.